Hey everybody, Jeremy here. Today I'm going to be taking a look at a dash camera from Thinkware. Now this is the Thinkware u3000 dash camera, and it is certainly near the higher end of the spectrum when it comes to these types of products. I do want to thank Thinkware for sending this camera over to me so that I can review it for you today. And throughout the course of this video, I'm going to be going over as many features as I possibly can based on what you're going to get inside of this box without any additional purchases. Now there are a couple of features I'm not going to be able to test, and that includes the parking surveillance feature as well as the time-lapse feature. And the reason for that is because those features require one of two special cables that are not included in the box and you'll have to purchase separately. And that includes a cable for hardwiring it to your car or an optional OBD2 cable that you can plug into the diagnostic port of the car. Those don't come included with this camera, so those are two things that I'm not going to be able to test, unfortunately. But for everything else, it's fair game. All right, so let's open up this box, check out everything that comes inside. Real quick, before I get into the box, let me tell you about some specifications for this camera that you might find useful. So as far as the sensor goes, it has a Sony STARVIS 2 image sensor, and that is going to allow this camera to record in 4K quality at 30 frames per second as a maximum. But if you want to bump that resolution down to 2K, then you'll increase the frames up to 60 frames per second. It also has a wide angle viewing area of 152 degrees. Super night vision 4.0 de-warping technology, has built-in GPS, a road safety warning system, safety camera alert, built-in radar, the time-lapse and parking surveillance feature like I mentioned before. You can connect it to a Thinkware app in order to view all of your videos that you store on the camera, but it also supports micro SD cards up to 256 gigabytes. All right, first out of the box is going to be the dash cam. So let's take it out of this plastic so that you can get a nice good look at it. There's the front view, side view there, there's the back, there's the top, and the other side. Then underneath that, you get a plethora of plastic bags with even more little accessories on the inside. And we're going to start things off with this power adapter here. This is how you're going to power the camera inside of your car. So you're just going to plug this into, well, what used to be referred to as the cigarette lighter in your car. So that goes into there, and then you plug this into the camera, and the cable does appear to be pretty long. It's got some good length to it. They also supply you with a 64 gigabyte micro SD card along with a full-size USB card adapter so that you can easily take this and put it into your computer to look at all of your files or transfer your files or do whatever you want with it. They'll be stored on here and you'll be able to look at them on your computer should you choose to do so. Here is the mount that you're going to be putting on your windshield. Has some 3M tape already set and ready to go. It's got these 3 prongs here, and these are going to go into some identical slots on the bottom of the camera so that you can install it that way. You also have some heat blocking film that you can use. This is a CPL filter that you can choose to put on the front of the lens of this camera, and the purpose of this filter is to reduce dashboard reflections and enhance color contrast in videos. All right, so it says that this filter needs to be positioned correctly for optimal results, and it has a little guide here to show you exactly how to achieve those optimal results. We also get some cable management anchors here with some more 3M tape on those. Some additional 3M tape. We get a Thinkware branded trim tool as well. And that is pretty much it. This little booklet right here is not an instruction manual. It is the Thinkware Dashcam Safety Information and Warranty booklet, and it has a variety of languages in here as well. So looking around the box, there doesn't appear to be an instruction manual, but if you do go to their website, you are able to download an instruction manual from there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it a good look over, I'm going to set everything up, then I'll be back and we can go over the features that this camera has to offer as well as some test footage. So I'm here in the car with the camera, and I installed the little filter right there on the lens, and at this point all I have to do is take this heat resistant film and just stick it right there on the windshield, and then I'll just connect the camera to that sticky tape. But before even doing that, I did go ahead and connect it to the Thinkware Link app in order to access all the different settings and modes that this camera is capable of doing. So let me show you that right now. So this is the Thinkware Link app, and you'll use this to access the different settings on the camera and also access the live view. So this is already connected to my phone, and when I tap the live view icon here, it'll say that it's switching to a Wi-Fi network to use the feature, and whether or not I want to continue, I say sure. So what it's doing is it's creating a temporary Wi-Fi connection between the camera and my phone. My phone is going to connect to that, and then it's going to show me the live view. So right there is the live view of the camera. You can see my hand right there. There is a few seconds delay between what I see on the screen and when I'm actually doing it. But this is what the live view looks like. As you see here, it says align the blue line with the center of the hood and align the green line with the front edge of the hood. And that's going to be the proper positioning for the camera. You choose to do things that way. But this is what the live view looks like here, and as you can see at the bottom, once I tap the screen, it shows the miles per hour that I would be traveling if I were driving. It shows the date and it shows the time as well, and then there's also a GPS icon here. You can also tap the blue grid button on the top right to get rid of those alignment lines there, so you can just have a nice clean view of the road ahead. And then you can tap this microphone here in order to enable or disable voice recording. Voice recording enabled. So it's now enabled, and then when I tap it again, it's disabled. So now we can just move back and we can look at the dash cam info. This is the dash cam info screen, and by the way, I did update the firmware to this camera. It's really easy to do. You can download the latest firmware from the Thinkware website, and then once you do that, you put in the SD card that they gave you, put that into your computer, format that card, and then you download the firmware, unzip it in your computer. Then once it's unzipped, you take the file, it should just be one file, and move that file to the micro SD card. Then put the micro SD card in the camera, turn the camera on once it's in your car, and it'll update automatically, and it'll tell you when it's finished updating. Now the settings are split into these 5 categories. So we got memory card settings here. It tells us that the memory card will record with the continuous priority, or you can give priority to different functions such as incident priority, parking, manual, or driving recording only. I'm just going to have it at continuous. Camera settings. We are at the default resolution of 4K at 30 frames per second. But we can also change it to QHD, which is 2K at 60 frames per second if we wanted to do that as well. Image quality I have on high by default. You can change the brightness of the front camera. We don't have a rear camera, so this brightness rear won't really mean anything. You can rotate the rear camera if you have one. Super Night Vision 4.0 will make nighttime driving, even in really dark conditions, it should make it look pretty decent, and you can enable that for the parking surveillance mode as well. We got the record settings here. Voice recording is currently disabled. Here's some privacy recording features here. That's currently disabled. Continuous mode, incident recording sensitivities. You can change that. You can change parking mode, your parking mode waiting time, thermal protection. I mean, just look at all these different settings here. Now we have road safety settings. All right, so this is pretty interesting. I'm able to select my vehicle type, which is an SUV. And then here are some other settings that you can have. I'm going to enable all of these here. So this is a lane departure warning. I'm going to put it on mid. I just want to test it. Lane departure warning speed, like what speed do you want this to go off when you are departing from your lane? I'm just going to say I'll just say 30 miles per hour just for testing. We'll see how that goes. We have the forward collision warning. I'll put that on mid. Low speed forward collision warning speed. I'm just going to have that at mid as well. There's also a rear collision warning. Don't have a rear camera, but you can see this is for the rear collision speed, rear collision recording, and front departure vehicle warning. In case you're not paying attention at that red light, this will let you know that you need to go. So I just currently have that one disabled as well. So you can do pretty much anything normally you can do right here inside of this app. And then at the bottom, you can go and you can look at the different recordings that is saved to the memory card on the camera. You can choose to just look at those. So I can just click on this right here, and it's not going to be moving because the camera's not moving right now. But this shows you here everything that was going on at that moment and everything that I've done up until this point, which is not a whole lot, just kind of getting this all set up. But it's all right there for you to look at the footage there, or you can choose to look at it in your computer. And now for the moment I'm sure you've all been waiting for, the test footage. So in this condition, it is a very nice day outside with plenty of sunlight, and I'm recording all of this footage in the maximum resolution, which is 4K at 30 frames per second. And as you can see, everything looks very smooth. The image is very clear, and the vibrations are very minimal. In fact, they're barely noticeable. That 3M tape does a very good job of keeping the camera secure to the windshield without a whole lot of wobble. Now, in these really good conditions, it's also easier to make out license plates. So if you're close enough to a car at a reasonable distance, especially at this resolution, then when you zoom in, you can make out a license plate pretty clearly. However, if you want to capture the license plates of cars that are in the left lane or the right lane next to you, it becomes a little bit more difficult. You have to be close, but not too close, of course, in order to clearly make out every letter and every number. I can make out some of them pretty easily, but I'm not 100% sure what some of those license plates say when I zoom in nice and close. Now, the other thing about recording at 30 frames per second is that it naturally introduces a little bit of motion blur, since 30 frames per second is closer to what you would see with your own human eyes. So if you were to take your hand and just wave it in front of your face pretty quickly, you'll see that there's a little bit of a ghosting effect going on with your hand. And that's because you're seeing that type of motion blur. At 60 frames per second, a lot more is being captured at one time. Therefore, that motion blur is not nearly as prevalent as 30 frames per second. And that means that when cars are driving past, or just when fast motion is happening in general and you want to stop and freeze that frame, you have a better opportunity of seeing the plates more clearly when you're recording at 60 frames per second, because it helps to mitigate some of that motion blur. But the resolution will be a little bit less, so maybe you won't be able to zoom in as much with the same clarity as you can with 4K, but mitigating the motion blur with 60 frames per second may be enough to help you capture license plates that are really going by quickly. You can also see from some of this test footage what it would look like when the sun is beaming almost directly in front of the camera. You see in some of these clips, part of it is a little bit washed out towards the direction where the sun is coming from, and you can also see just a little bit of a reflection from the windshield and a little sunspot here or there. But we also may have to give credit to the filter in front of the camera's lens for helping to mitigate some of those effects from the sun beaming and glaring down on the camera. But what about nighttime driving? To test out the Super Night Vision 4.0, I found a road that did not have any lights whatsoever, not even street lights, and it was pitch black outside. And as you can see here, it is extremely dark. And you can forget about getting any type of small details or even the color of a car when you have the Super Night Vision enabled on extremely dark roads. But it does brighten things up enough so that you can see what happens in front of you. It may not be the greatest detail in the world, but you still can capture what is happening. And in a moment like that, that's very important. But when you are driving at night and you have some street lights lining the road, here's what that footage is going to look like. So now I want to talk about the camera's built-in safety features while showing some more video footage. The first feature I want to go over is the lane departure warning system. And basically the way that this works is whenever the camera detects that you're starting to drift from one lane to another, it's going to give you an audible alert. And you can set up the speed that you want the camera to detect before it gives you that alert. So for example, you can set it up for 70 miles an hour, which means that it will not warn you unless you're going 70 miles an hour or above. And on the low end, you can set it up so that it doesn't warn you unless you're going 30 miles an hour or above. And I set it to 30 so I can be sure that I get those alerts, since it's really easy to get to 30 miles an hour. And when I intentionally drifted from one lane to another, the camera did alert me, but the alert was really strange. It was only 2 clicking sounds. And I'm not sure if it's supposed to just be clicking sounds. I was expecting an audible, like a beeping sound, but it was just a tick tick. And if you're listening to the radio, if you're listening to music at a reasonable volume, or especially if you're listening to music at a louder volume, then those 2 clicks really won't get your attention. So I didn't find the lane departure warning system to be all that helpful unless you aren't listening to anything else. Another thing that this camera can do is alert you when the car in front of you has taken off, but you haven't moved yet. So think if you're at a stoplight and if for some reason you're not paying attention, that light turns green and you're still there, the people behind you might get mad and they'll start to honk. So this camera can detect when the car in front of you is moving, and I found that to be very helpful. The beep that it does give off is not an alarming beep. It's not something that's going to shock you out of your seat or make you accidentally slam on the gas. It's a very somber, mellow beep, and it's sort of like an elevator tone, you know, like doom. That's what it sort of sounds like. And it doesn't take a long time for that to happen. I think it gives around 1 second from when a car starts moving ahead before it lets you know that. So it doesn't give enough time for anyone behind you to get frustrated. And I did find it to be loud enough to get your attention if there's no loud music playing. All of these alerts are really dependent on you being able to hear clearly in the car. But if you have a lot going on, it's going to be harder to hear all of these alerts. But I did think that that feature was very helpful, so I left it on. This dash cam can also detect speed cameras, which I thought was really cool and very useful. So when I came up on the speed camera, this dash cam let me know with a voice that a speed camera was 0.2 miles ahead, and it also told me what the speed limit is. And it gave me enough time to look down at my dash to make sure I wasn't going too fast. And then once I got to the speed camera, it gave me another beep to let me know that I have reached the speed camera. And I think that can be really useful to helping you keep your speed in check, to help reduce the chances of you getting a ticket. And I love the fact that instead of just a beep or a series of beeps or something that you would have to code from all of the other alerts that you can get, I love the fact that they used an actual voice, and it was the female voice that comes on when the camera is powered on. So I really love the fact that they used actual words to let me know that a speed camera was coming up, and also what the speed needs to be in order for me to avoid being hit by that camera. Now, the forward collision warning system is one that I fortunately was not able to test because I did not feel comfortable putting myself in that situation where the camera will feel the need to warn me if I'm about to rear end someone. But if it works anything like the other features, then I'm confident that it does work properly. But again, if you have a more modern car, then it probably has that type of alert system built in anyway. On my car, there are a few LEDs that are high up on the dashboard. And if it feels that I'm coming up on a car too fast, it will start to beep and it'll flash red lights on the windshield to get my attention. So if your car has that, that will be more useful and more helpful to you than what this dash camera will be able to offer, because it gives you a louder sound and it also gives you flashing lights. The connected features of this dash cam is one of the biggest selling points for it. And that's also where one of my frustrations comes in, because you have to download 2 separate apps in order to get all of the features. The first app is the Thinkware DashLink app, which I showed you at the beginning of the video. But the second app is the Thinkware Cloud app. And that app will allow you to access some of the GPS functions of the camera, and it'll also allow you to remotely monitor what the camera sees and what it can detect in real time. But in order for you to access that app, the process, though it's outlined in the instructions, is a little bit more complicated than I would like for it to be. For example, if you were to just download the Thinkware Cloud app, you won't be able to access it immediately. You have to make an account, you have to sign in, but you have to first download and set up the Thinkware Dashlink app first. And once you have that app set up, you have to go into the settings of that app and you have to find the network settings, and then you have to connect the camera to another source of the internet that's not your phone. So in my case, it was the Wi-Fi hotspot in the car because they can't use the same connection. So I had to go into the Wi-Fi details of my car, I had to put in the password, then I had to go back to the Thinkware Cloud app where it asked me to register the camera before I can continue. And it does that by scanning a barcode on the bottom of the camera, which I've tried a handful of times and it just would not work. Eventually everything went through, but it didn't go through on the first or the second or the third try, which made me think that something was wrong. But once it did connect, I had access to all of the additional features. So for example, if someone were driving your car, or if you just wanted to monitor where your car is in real time, then as long as that camera is connected to the internet, you can go into the app, you can access the live view, you can look on a map that marks the GPS location of where the car is and where the car has been, and it saves that data so that you can look back in the future. Even if the camera is not actively on, it stores where the car has been, so you'll be able to go back and look at it. And then it also tells you things such as if it detected a sudden acceleration or a sudden deceleration. And there's also some safety features as well, such as if it were to detect a crash, you can set up a person to contact immediately to let them know, hey, there's been a crash. But I really do think it would be great if they found a way to merge those two apps. Instead of having to go to the Thinkware Dashlink app for a direct phone connection for some features, but then having to use another internet connection to access the Cloud app with a different set of features, it's just a little bit too much. I would like for both of those apps to be merged together and have everything all in one. So my overall thoughts on the Thinkware u3000 dash cam is that it's a very good dash cam that produces some nice, clear, crisp images, and it also has a very robust feature set that is both helpful and also modern. I like the fact that it has these built-in safety features. I like the different alerts that it can give you if you choose to have those on. And I also like the connected features. My biggest con about this camera definitely has to be the price. It is a very expensive dash camera. It comes in at around $429 when it's not on sale. And you don't get access to all of the features when you pay that price. You still have to go out and either get a hard wiring cable to connect it to your car or an OBD2 cable in order to connect it to the diagnostic port. And if you really want to round out all the features, then having the rear camera is incredibly helpful as well. But again, that's an additional expense on top of what you've already paid money for. I think it would have been really helpful if they added at least one of those cables to the car so that you can have immediate access to the parking features, since that's something that I think a lot of people are going to be curious and interested in. So if they leave their car on the street or leave their car in the parking garage, if something were to happen, they can have video footage that they can use for any type of litigation or any kind of documentation or proof in case something does happen to their car. So if you want everything that this dash cam has to offer, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. But I do think that that'll be a one-time expense, because once you get the rear camera and once you get it hardwired, I really personally don't see a reason why you would want to get another camera after this, because you're only going to be in your car for so long, and this one has enough features that I think a dash cam should have and a dash cam needs in order to be effective. So those are my final thoughts about this camera. And if you are interested in picking it up, check out the link in the description. It'll take you right to it. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, I'm Jeremy, and I'll speak to you soon.